So first of all, we have to put it on record that we appreciate the fact that senior politicians in Ghana are pro-digital. It's not all African countries where you have senior politicians who understand them, the benefits that technology could bring to the country. That notwithstanding, we have a problem with the design of some of these initiatives, and I will explain. Recently, a number of institutions, the CTD, ASAP, Amani, the World Bank, etc., came together to look into an emerging phenomenon that, to our mind, compromise some of the good outcomes that all of us anticipate from technology, digitalization, etc. I call it state enchantment. And tap and go is a very good example, unfortunately, of the fears that we have around the state enchantment phenomenon. And by state enchantment, we mean situations where private companies, private benefits, private gain is dressed up as if they are public. And then, because of that fact, these private gains are procured with public costs or with public investments. And the justification is that they are going to lead to national transformation. I'll explain further. When Tap and Go was presented to the country, it was said to be a GPRTU initiative backed by the government, because we all know, even though GPRTU is an association of private transport operators, they have a special handshake with the government due to the bargaining relationship they have.
Guys, it's not good, the sound.
I'm sorry, is the sound better?
Sorry, yeah, the sound, you sound a little better now. So go on.
Oh, okay. So what I said is that when Tap and Go was first presented to the country, it was presented as a GPRTU initiative, which is receiving support from the government, and in respect of which the government is particularly involved. So, can you still hear me, Samson?
A lot better now.
Okay. And what has happened is that because GPRTU, even though it's an association of private organizations, has a strategic understanding with the government in setting prices for public transport, this was seen as a public transport initiative, if you recall. So a way that it was presented was that the public transport of Ghana, the one that most people benefit from, the Trotros, the Metro Mass Transit in its various incarnations, STC and the rest of it, are all going to be transformed using a platform that was primarily a public initiative. Then we discover eventually that the GPRTU actually have no stake in the project. They are not strategic partners in that sense. They don't own anything in the Transport for Ghana consortium that has been set up to run this. And even worse, the industrial relations manager then comes out and says that they were not consulted in the design of the program. So that made us very, interested, because obviously we've had issues around trying to get information on this Transport for Ghana consortium, this Tap and Go, who is behind it, why were they, selected, etc. So, the usual thing that happens in this country when projects of this nature comes up. And we discovered, quite to our amazement, that this was an entirely private initiative. It's a group of companies that have come together. They have different solutions that were already existing, and they've banded it together and rebranded it and presented. Our problem is that it was not presented as somebody's private initiative, somebody's private company putting out a solution out there, and then the government may be saying that we support all kind of private initiatives. This has been presented as a national transformation project based on which important concessions have been made, and I'll explain them in a moment. On top of that, one of the companies that is very active, there are two main companies in there, out of about 3 companies that are critical to getting this to run. One of those companies has already been cited in procurement issues in Ghana because of Agenda 111. iRisk has become the target of members of the minority in parliament who've gone to court claiming that sole sourcing of transactions in Agenda 111 to iRisk constituted a breach of procurement rules. And that matter is still under investigation by the civil society movement. We've not seen serious responses by government why this company was selected, why is it that this was sole sourced. And then we find them again in this transaction, again with no explanation as to how they emerged, as to why these particular companies are being favored. And then you ask me and say, okay, what is the problem? Maybe a group of companies have come together to create something and the government is pushing it. Isn't that what we are talking about in terms of private sector enablement and things like that? I think our concern is that there has to be a double playing field if you want to do promotion of private enterprise in this country. You can't have a situation where you create something that, because of its nature, is giving privileged access to things that are very important. Like, for instance, if you put your mobile phone number into the app, it automatically pulls up your Ghana card information. That means that it has very special access to Ghana card information. And these are protected databases and the rest of it. On what basis was this company granted this level of privilege access? Why? It may be that everything is completely noxious, but the government has to be far more transparent in its disclosures about these projects and why private companies benefit than it's been.
Okay.
If Ghana, for instance, has no government backing, for instance, some of the access that it has will not be the way that it is. So, for instance, you think of the Ayalolo buses, where they are now the authorized application. Ayalolo and these kinds of entities are now government entities. Where was there a procurement process that allowed this company to be the authorized provider of the IT platform? Or is it because they have special relationship with powerful entities, powerful individuals in the government who were giving all of this support? Then we find out later on, security researchers find out when they scrutinized the application, that there were major security breaches. And the question is that, will the institutions in this country tasked with regulation, your Data Protection Commission and the rest of it, will they have the independence to be able to provide the necessary regulation, given that it's a group of private companies, when the government have presented it as a national program? And that is why we continually advise that when things are private, they are a group of companies, they've set it up, they are making profits, we should be careful in how we use state power to drive out their competitors. We just learned that the GPRTU actually has its own digital platform called Oya, which they are also promoting. So if now another group of private companies want to introduce something like that to benefit the rest of us and the rest, and they don't want to compete in the open market because for some reason we think there's something special about them, then we should be transparent, we should publish the details, we should say why the government wants to use public power and public money potentially to back such initiatives and the rest. Okay. Otherwise, we risk a very serious situation where people use private business as cover for enriching themselves, but then with state power to enforce against competitors and things like that. So those are our concerns, and we hope that the government spokesman in the studio will address them systematically.